Hey, can you hear me there?
Mhm.
There you go. You're joined. There's Fernando.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm just enjoying watching technology rollouts happen of our own now for the first time in a while. So I believe I believe we are streaming, but I'm waiting for the full stream to publish. And I'm trying to figure out if that is so. No, that's definitely not a public link. That is the only to speakers. That is that's here, Amanda. That doesn't go to the live studio. Just live studio people can see it right here if they're on there. So there we go. This is why we do training on the first one. It should be going live now. We are live and pushing out here. Let's add the second channel. Okay. Good. Sending data. Streaming to both. Ha! Look at that. I know you believed in me the whole time, guys, but there it is working. So, hey, you know what's cool? We now have officially our own live streaming channel. And Fernando, we are here with you to talk about that. To talk about financial models in architecture. I'm really excited about this topic. So, I was looking forward to. Sorry for the challenge here at kicking off. It is our first ever, public live stream off the ISA platform. So that seems to be working on both places, which makes me happy. But I want to make sure that all the kinks are out of the system. So tell us a little bit about, so you're a Spanish chapter leader, and you've been an architect for many years. Why all the financial stuff, right? We're engineers, we're tech guys, right? So where did all this come from?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you great.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I'm Fernando Garcia. I'm an enterprise architect. I have been engineer and architect profession leader in several companies, and currently cooperating with IASA Global. So why do we want to talk about decision toolkits for architects? I would like to talk about this because I feel that we need to solve like a very practical problem, which is how architects can make better investment conversations with business and finance stakeholders. And this is not a finance lecture. It's not a theoretical architecture question. It is a toolkit question. So I don't know if you can see my presentation at this moment.
We can't yet. I am going to turn over the presentation to you here in a second. I wanted to actually sit and chat with you for a second, though, and I know I'm shocking you and everything with this, but it's, I was talking to a couple of architects today, and they were talking about how they're not invited to this conversation about what does it mean to do the money part of architecture, right? How does my project get a budget and things like that? And they were asking how to do that. How do I make this real with a business stakeholder who thinks, I'm only gonna, this is only gonna cost a couple $100,000, and the architect goes, well, honestly, that's probably not true. And also, where's the value? How do I think about the calculation value itself? What does that look like? And I think the question became today, and I was curious about your thoughts before we get started. I know you've got some amazing presentation to do, but before we get started, I thought, how did you get started with this whole talking about financial models and understanding the cost and the benefit, and being able to talk about value to business people who maybe often don't understand technology at all?
Yes. Well, the thing that I have observed in the past is that we have usually an enterprise architecture team or an architecture team close to business management, where their role has been somehow shaken in the last years, and they are becoming only financial controllers.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, what I see is that indeed you deserve funding when doing good architecture. But to get funding on those architectures, normally you need to be able to demonstrate measurable outcome. You need to be able to tell with numbers that the architecture design and the investment in a project that has been properly architected pays off. And usually what I see is that everybody today knows how to create diagrams. Many architects don't know the structure of an architectural framework to create those diagrams, and that is why at the end the architects usually stop in the diagrams, and they do not go all the way to be able to help executives take financial decisions. That's the
what did you do? How did you learn that the hard way, right? I remember my first meeting with an executive, and I was just trying to organize our screens so that we were side by side. Restream has all of these little setups where you can organize speakers, in different ways. Let's try this one. Yay! Oh, there's two of us. There's four of us for that one. Let's see. Can I remove this one? Remove. Ah, look at this. Hey, there we go. Now we're just talking. So what was when you first realized you needed to have these skills? When was that, right? Like, what was that date and time where you went, oh, I'm not just a technologist. I actually have to talk about this stuff to people who have no idea what we're talking about, and then come up with numbers that makes sense for our business. And if they believe me, then I'm the one that made up those numbers, nobody else. I'm the one that's on the hook for saying the TCO is this, or the ROI is that, or the value is this other.
Yes, I think that to come to these conclusions, you need to be in the position of relevant or chief architect in an important customers, because usually on these days everything is offered through a request for proposal, and you only get to see part of the picture. So if you are in the position of a chief architect, and maybe you have a wider vision of the services and the products and the solutions that you can manage, then is when you realize that indeed you need to help that customer, and at least the IT group, to achieve goals that will save money, because as you know, all the investments in IT are under the scrutiny of executives, because they are sometimes reluctant to invest in something that is not directly providing better business results or better improvement of business capabilities. And this type of situations, it's difficult to see them when you are just offering one subsystem or one part of the architecture for the whole group. So this, I think it happened like 5-6 years ago when I was in a relevant position as chief architect. I think it was an important energy company. I was dealing with different projects, and even though that the whole sourcing was founded from the very beginning for a long-term contract, every project that had a plan for specific kickoff in specific months for the transformation and the transition stages had to be reevaluated, even though all the contract has been signed under an agreement, and a situation in which we have previously studied all the situation and all the assets that were part of that contract in which the company would be managing those services. So that was real situation in which you had to realize that you have to make money for that company, not just to manage the IT. Yeah.
So tell me, can you share your screen? There should be a share button at the bottom of your of Resend there in the, if you see where we're going, then you can show us the techniques that you learned in dealing with customers at the chief architect level.
Okay, so let me see
And
if you can see the window that I'm sharing at this moment. Yes.
Yes, look at that. Just popped right up there.
Okay, so it's in
That's
full
quite
screen.
cool looking. And
So
I'm going to cut out my video real quick, Fernando. That means I'll let you talk for a little bit, and then I'll come back and sort of, chat with you about what you presented and maybe ask some questions from the audience and that kind of thing.
Okay. So, like I said, today it's a simple idea of trying to help architects how to fund or to produce outcomes that is not just design, it's measurable financial data. And we will discuss first how the proposals sometimes fail to get funded. And then I will propose 6 decisions, 6 calculations that each one is going to answer, hopefully, a specific executive question to answer where money is going, when value appears, what operational improvement is created, and so on. And finally, I will try to connect all these calculations, all these decision models into a condensed example so that you can see that if you are in a position where you can show all these architectural decisions in real financial data, then this will produce a coherent decision model and not just a set of disconnected formulas. Okay. So my first question here for you is why do excellent architecture proposals, the ones that we produce many times, still do not get funded? Think about the situation in which you have been in a status like what I was mentioning before in an important corporation. And my answer here is that this is not to blame finance. This is not to blame executives. The point here is to recognize that the approval conversation that we need to have with this team, whether it is the enterprise architecture team or the consulting team or the security team, this conversation is often lost before you have the chance to evaluate your architecture. So you have an excellent architecture proposal, but it fails because the value is implicit in the document, in the assets that you create. But that's not what the executive leaders in the corporations need. They need the value to be explicit. They need to compare with other proposals, and they need to measure all the proposals with the same values or with the same variables at the same time. So I want to start with the fact that should make us think a bit about these market research sources that I place here on the left side. And basically, what this means is that all the technology business cases all fail in a high percentage, not from bad technology, but from failing to translate it into operational measurable business impact. So if you look at the diagram in the right, this is the failure pattern. And I guess many of you have experienced it, because the architect on the left is fluent in technology, and then the CFO on the right is fluent in business value. And in between, there is a gap. And this is a real gap, because the technology does not connect with the business value. So it needs a bridge. And now, if you look at the bottom of the bridge, or the bottom half, you see the bridge. That's the same architect using the same technology, but this time there are two additional steps that will help, which is operational impact and financial impact. Because the technology doesn't go straight to the business value, and it goes through what actually changes on the ground. Is the time that you save when you deploy that architecture, the risks that are reduced, the capacity that is freed up. And only that gets translated into financial terms, and terms that the business already understands. So that's basically the entire premise of this session. Not how do we build better technology, because most of us know how to do that, but the real question is, how do we build a bridge? How do we take what we design and consistently work through operational impact and financial impact, so that it arrives at the business executives with value instead of falling into the gap? So this is the kind of questions that we do, and the kind of questions that the executives think. So here, what we have to do is to start speaking the language of the executive. And things that we say, like in the left, we say as architects, this will drastically reduce our technical debt. What we see here is that we reduce the risk and it's going to improve the maintainability and so on. But the CFO is hearing a question: which specific financial risk or operational outcome do we get, and how we are going to solve it? And sometimes we also hear we are increasing platform resilience and system uptime. We are trying to tell them that they will have fewer outages. But the CFO on the right hears what financial loss are we avoiding every year by doing this? And this is the kind of things that we need to answer. So this is the vocabulary shift. Everything from here on, these calculations, is about how we will build the answers to these questions on the right. And we need to build them in advance, so that we are nowhere. We never can be caught translating on the fly. So we have established a vocabulary, but let's put it to work on the metric that causes the most damage when used alone, and that's ROI, return on investment. We need to go beyond ROI, because ROI tells you hypothetical long-term profitability, but that's it. It says nothing about risk, about time frame, about the operational disruption, or how fast your organization actually needs to move. And it really doesn't inform about a decision. It's really misleading decisions with the mere figure of ROI. So in the table, I can show you an example. So imagine a mid-sized manufacturing company which needs to choose between two initiatives. Project A introduces intelligent automation into selected processes such as invoicing, order entry, customer onboarding, that type of things. And Project B is replacing a fragmented legacy system with a cloud ERP platform covering finance and supply chain operations, for instance. So at first glance, Project A appears to be the obvious choice because it's projecting a 330% return over 3 years, and it's paying back under 6 months. It has a limited time scope also, meaning that it has lower delivery risk, less disruption, and measurable value within 3 to 6 months. And then Project B presents a different profile. Its projected return also above 100 over 3 years, with payback approximately in 16 months. Adaptation affects the wider enterprise and requires substantial change management and may take between 12, 18 months or longer to produce measurable value. So this is not a simple choice between good return and weaker return. Automation is going to deliver targeted near-term improvements, while ERP modernization is creating a strategic operating foundation. So the final figures that you see here are external benchmarks, which are based in Forrester studies of composite organizations, and you can read that on the left sources mentioned. So the risk is the timing and the disruption and are all illustrative assessment. But the central message is that ROI must be evaluated along payback, along delivery risk, time to value, and things like operational disruption. So a balanced capital decision is not only asking why or which project is returning more, but it's also asking which project is going to advance the priorities of our organization at an acceptable level and with less risk. So this is what we have to do to go beyond ROI that we sometimes show and stop there. So here we have a real case study before we get into the 6 calculators. So I want to show you a real case, and this is the real modernization from a company called Lion, which is one of Australia's largest beverage companies. And SAP is at the center of its operations, like a typical manufacturing company, connecting finance, manufacturing, logistics, sales, human resources, and it's taking more than 50 integrations. So as you can see, this cannot be just reduced to a simple ROI calculation. The reality is that this company needed to reduce the cost and the complexity of the SAP environment, but also needed to remove legacy customization and to maintain every critical integration. So you could present a financially attractive project, but probably it would have not been accepted because if it interrupted manufacturing or compromised core operational processes, that was a high risk. So after 10 months of preparation with the providers, the reality is that Lion was able to complete an 80-hour migration to the cloud, and they moved up approximately 4 terabytes of data and the connected systems were preserved, and the case study did not have any downtime or business disruptions. And the results, as we say, were measurable because the total cost of ownership fell by 25%. Business reports were produced in half the time, and a critical data execution process fell from 20 minutes to 6 minutes. So this is the central idea. Financial return matters, but it's only one dimension of capital value, because Lion also evaluated things like operational continuity, delivery risk, speed of decision making, how they would simplify the technical environment. And at the end, it was about the different options to produce a cleaner architecture, a more lean architecture without any disruptions. Okay, so here are the 6 calculators that architects need to succeed. I will briefly mention them before we get into each one of them. First one is business capability cost. The second one is payback and time to value. The third one is operational value. The fourth is expected loss that you avoid. The fifth one is the cloud unit economics, or the FinOps that we are used to do in many customers. And finally, all of that together provides investment prioritization. But together, what they need to answer is one single question, which is the only question a CFO or a board executive actually cares about, which is, should we invest in this or not? So let's start with the first one. And let me ask you here a simple question. How much does your organization spend on customer onboarding? Because most companies, they can tell you the cost of an application, but only a few can tell you the cost of running a business capability, such as customer onboarding, which is a very typical one. So at first glance, if you take a look at the formula, it looks like a simple addition, okay? But it is not that simple, because the difficult part, it's almost never the arithmetics. The difficult part is deciding how much of a shared platform belongs to each business capability. So you are using technology that is shared between different capabilities. And here you see this list of applications in the right side. And you can take, for instance, identity management, IAM. And IAM supports not only customer onboarding, but employee access, partner portals, mobile applications, APIs, dozens of different capabilities. So if you charge the entire annual cost to customer onboarding, it would immediately distort the financial decision. What you need as an architect is a rule that allows you to defend something that can be allocated between different capabilities. So depending on the organization, this is something that you need to decide on how many transaction volumes or active users or API consumption, how much infrastructure utilization, operational support effort, how much of that is going to be able, or it's going to have to be allocated between different capability owners. So the important point is not finding the perfect allocation. It is making the allocation explicit, consistent, repeatable among all that. So once you have that rule, the capability cost is a reliable metric for investment decision. And as you can see, is something that you need to multiply to the cost allocation in the formula. So only the portion of each application annual cost that supports the selected business capability should be allocated, because shared platforms require an explicit allocation rule to avoid double counting the same thing. And you can see how the allocation percentage impacts in the assigned cost of each application beyond the initial figure that we have, or that we manage, is the annual cost. So this is the first calculation that helps us create that financial decision. The second one that I want to present you here is the one called payback and time to value. So this slide is comparing two concepts. The first one is time to value, because time to value is the moment when the first measurable benefit appears. And the second is payback. Payback is the moment when cumulative net benefits recover the initial investment. And these two metrics are related, but they are not the same. And I show you another example here on the right. A project may deliver value and still take time to recover the full investment. In this table, both projects, as you can see, they require the initial investment, which is 2 million euros. But both projects also reach the same financial benefit level, and at full run rate, that's 100,000 euros per month, which is equivalent to 1.2 euros per year, as you can see in stabilized net benefit. But the difference is the delivery approach. Project A is using a large release model, and it doesn't create measurable value until month number 13. And from month 13, it generates 40,000 euros per month, and so on. It grows until month 25. And Project B is using incremental delivery. So it's going to start creating value in month number 4. But as you can see, it follows the same benefit progression. But this changes the cash flow profile, because Project A is reaching payback in month 38, and Project B is reaching payback in month 29. The investment is the same, the financial annual benefit is the same, but Project B recovers the investment 9 months earlier. And this is why the timing of benefits matter. The formula that you see on the slide is a simplified approximation, but the real calculation must use cumulative monthly net benefits. So maybe it would be too complex to explain this in just one slide. But the architectural lesson is clear. Architecture is affecting not only the final solution, it's affecting the sequence in which capabilities reach production. So the earlier delivery, then you will reduce your financial exposure sooner. And also it's going to allow the organization to validate the assumptions that they have taken for that project sooner. And this means that the projects are not just examining ROI, they are also analyzing how quickly they can create value or measurable value, okay? Now let's see the third one, which is the operational value. And this means that the capacity released is not only the cash that you save. It means that it has financial value only when the organization can redeploy those savings or avoid that capacity. And in the example, again, you can see that for a specific study of operational value, we have a company with 150 employees which are impacted. And with the formula, we see that that would be the impacted population, the P. But realizable value is the population times the annual fully loaded cost per employee, and then times the efficiency gain, which is also a discretional value, and then a realization factor. And why do we add the realization factor? Because, as you can see on the example, if the annual cost of per employee is 48,000 euros, and the efficiency gain is, let's say, 4%, the potential capacity released is that multiplication that gives us 288,000 euros per year. So mathematically, this is correct, but the organization has not automatically saved 288,000 years. We need to be more careful. What it has created is a potential capability, and that capacity only becomes measurable when the organization can capture. For example, the business with that money may avoid future hiring, or it may reduce overtime, or it may eliminate external support, or it may process more transactions with the same team, or reassign people to higher value activities, these kind of things. So this is why we add realization factor. The realization factor represents the percentage of the release capacity that we can actually convert into measurable value. And in this example, we have agreed as an assumption, and we will use 60%. It's not a universal number. So for each case, you need to agree on which is the realization factor. It depends on how the organization plans to use the release capacity. But the calculation must show both numbers. And the distinction is important in executive decision because it prevents the business case from overstating benefits and forces the organization to define a clear value realization plan. Again, the key message is simple. The capacity released is not automatically cash-shaped, only is financial value when the organization can redeploy or avoid that capacity. Okay? So now let's go with calculator number 4, which is the expected loss avoided. The expected loss avoided makes the value visible. And the formula is also simple. ELA is the probability of a risk scenario times the estimated financial impact if the scenario occurs, if the disaster occurs, and times the estimated reduction provided by proposed controls, which means if we do that project, how much that would be reduced. So this formula is straightforward and helps the architects express risk reduction, but in financial terms. If you see again another example on the right, the example on the right says that we have a data breach, and that data breach has an annual probability of 10%. And if it happens, the estimated impact is 2 million euros. Without additional controls, that means that the expected annual loss is 200,000 euros. But if you create a project, which is here the proposed controls, we have estimated to reduce that exposure by 70%. So that produces an estimated annual loss reduction of 140,000 euros. So you can apply the same logic to other scenarios. But as you can see, the distinction is essential because the expected loss avoidance is a model. It's not a guaranteed saving. The probabilities are estimates. So you need to agree on this also. This is rarely precise, but the financial impact may change significantly because if a single incident happens, this may create a minor loss, and another incident of the same type may create a huge loss. So controls can also affect several risk scenarios at the same time. So the thing is that the risks themselves can also be correlated. For example, a cyber attack may cause a data breach and a system outage and regulatory issue at the same time. So we should not automatically treat those scenarios as independent. So for that reason, the value of this calculation is not a false precision. Its value is creating a structured decision about risk, impact, and control effectiveness. And that needs to happen because those assumptions need to be validated with risk department, security, finance. But the key message is this. If you are in a situation where you don't have incidents, that doesn't mean that the architecture created has no value. It may mean that the organization reduced its exposure to a potentially severe loss that did not happen. And this is, I think, something very interesting that we need to consider if we have a chance to discuss. The fifth one is about workload economics. It's about cloud mainly, movement to cloud that we probably have been acting at some point in time in our architect's life. So this slide introduces the workload economics at two different levels. The first one is annual run rate, total cost of ownership, and the second level is unit cost. Both are necessary. The TCO is telling us how much the workload costs to operate each year, and the unit cost is telling us how efficiently that workload supports the business. So again, I present you an example of the run rate comparison. You can see that in the left, on the traditional on-premises environment cost has been rated around 1.78 million euros per year. And you can consider that on that on-premises deployment, that includes compute infrastructure, storage, network infrastructure. It may also include or should include platform operations, data center operations, facilities, power, even real estate. Then you have the public cloud target model, which costs approximately 1.4 million euros per year as an example. And that includes everything: cloud consumption, managed platform services, and maybe even cloud operations and FinOps governance. So if you take these figures, you could say, okay, the estimated steady state reduction is then 380k euros per year, and that is 21.3 reduction in cost. But this is only the first level of the analysis, because lower annual TCO does not automatically mean better economics. We need to understand the cost of the business output. In this example, the workload processes 12 million customer transactions per year, as you can see on the right. So the on-premises cost per transaction is approximately 0.148 euro cents per transaction, and in the cloud is less, is 0.1117 euro cents per transaction, which is also reduced by 21%. But this second metric is important because it's connecting the technology to the business volume. And it leads us to ask better questions to financial. For instance, what happens if transaction volume grows? Or is the unit cost going to fall, or is going to remain stable? Or does the cloud consumption increase faster than the business demand? So this is where architecture matters, because elasticity can improve economics, and poor workload design can also increase cost. Maybe data movement can become expensive if you do it. Maybe always-on capacity can remove the expected benefit. Or maybe premium services can increase the run rate. And of course, you need to consider resiliency and observability, but these requirements can also change the picture. For that reason, cloud does not always guarantee lower cost. This is something that you have to analyze carefully with the figures, because the figures on this slide represent a steady state run rate cost. But they are not including the full cost of the transition. You need probably to consider migration costs, which must be assessed separately. You must perform dual running of platforms during the transition, which is also costly. You need to consider also connectivity costs and egress costs, license changes, commitments and reservations, premium support, organizational change, exit costs, things like that. So do not compare cloud and on-premises only through annual infrastructure cost. Measure both the total operational cost and the cost per business unit process. That is what turns a cloud cost comparison into a credible workload economics model. And finally, the last one here is calculator number 6, which is about investment prioritization. Because I'm sure that every architect has sat in a room where a system gets defunded or a project gets killed based just on gut feelings from someone's strong opinions with not enough evidence. And that doesn't survive a budget conversation. If you can't show your work, a CFO or a board member will not fund your recommendation, no matter how right you are. So this scorecard is to fix that. Every score is visible, every weight is justified, and the final number is something that you can defend line by line and not just an assertion. So how do we build this investment priority score? This is a final calculator that is bringing the previous financial techniques together with a formula that you see in the center. And the goal is not to decide automatically what happens to each application. The goal is to help us decide where the intervention matters the most to change the application landscape. So you see in the top that we begin with 4 criteria, which are applicable to all organizations, decided and agreed jointly in an executive board for a particular investment status. So you see that the business value carries 40% of that score because it's the main driver. Then risk exposure carries 35%, payback rating 20%, and cloud fit carries only 5%. So the 4 of them are adding 100, like it has to be. But then we have a second set of criteria that use different scoring scales to add. The goal is to add more flexibility to specific applications, so that, as you can see in the top row of the table, the business value is scored out of 25, the risk score is out of 20, payback is scored out of 5, and cloud fit scored out of 15. So we normalize every criterion before applying the weight. And the result is a priority score out of 100 when you do all the calculations. So for instance, if you take the first application, which is identity platform in the table, you can see that it has a very high business value and has a high risk exposure, and its payback rating is relatively low, and its cloud fit is moderate. That is 9. So when you do the calculations, the normalized score is 75.8. But the score is not telling you nothing. It's not telling you to retire or to replace it, because the application is strategically important. So the treatment is therefore to retain and to remediate it. But it's giving a high priority to act, as you can see. And as you can see also, the annual run cost is not influencing the decision. So in this case, the intervention may focus on security, on resiliency, or the technical depth. And the rest of the examples go in the same way. CRM has a 68.3, and reporting tool has a 41.6, which is in several levels telling you what is the proposed treatment. So the whole table is showing an important distinction, because the score is telling you the priority to act, and the treatment, the proposed treatment, tell us what kind of action is appropriate, and they are separate decisions. and it does the annual run cost does not participate in the priority score. That's intentional. So two things may be concluded here. The first one is priority tells us how important the intervention is when you need to do this rationalization. And then run cost indicates the potential scale of the economic opportunity. So a critical low-cost applications may still require an urgent action, and a high-cost application may offer a large financial opportunity without being the most urgent risk at the moment. So the value of the scorecard here is not mathematical precision. The value is transparency, because it makes the assumptions visible and it makes the trade-offs explicit. So as you can see, not application rationalization is simply one case out of the investment prioritization. And the same logic can apply to platforms, to data products, to integrations, and to other initiatives in the corporation at the same time. So we have now reviewed 6 individual financial techniques, but here I show you the real value when we connect them, because an executive decision is rarely based on one metric. It requires a coherent way of viewing the cost, the timing, the operational value, the risks, and also the investment priority. So here in this table, I bring you those perspectives together. The scenario is, as you can see, a modernization of a legacy customer onboarding platform. And it's telling us that the platform is processing 12 million transactions per year. And there you see the figures that we have been showing the previous slide. Annual run cost is 1.78 million euros. The target model to reduce the steady state is 1.4 million euros. Estimated annual reduction is 360K euros. It's also reducing the unit cost. So this is going to help us understand both the total cost and the operational efficiency. And the proposed modernization requires an investment of 2 million, as you can see. And then you have the first measurable benefit in month number 4, like we saw, and the full run rate benefit reached in month 16. All those data is together. So with all this data, this is not an automatically financial benefit. So you need to apply a realization factor of 60% to produce a realizable operational value approximately of 1.72.8 thousand euros per year, 1.72.8K per year. So under these assumptions, we will be reducing 360,000 euros. But the proposed treatment is an incremental modernization. So that recommendation does not come only from one score. And this is an important modeling discipline, because we should not only add every benefit that you see on this slide. And this is because some of the benefits may overlap. For example, part of the operational value probably has been reflected in the lower target run cost. So this transition cost also need to be validated, maybe in a more granular, refined way, or more closely month by month basis. But this is the proposal. This is the purpose of the toolkit altogether. It does not produce an automatic answer, but is producing a transparent and defensible investment case for the architect in front of financial. And now let me close with these 4 key messages. The first is about capital allocation. Because important architectural decisions influence where the organization is going to invest money, and they also influence operating cost and risk exposure. Architecture is therefore not just a blueprint design activity, it's part of how the organization is capable of allocating scarce resources. And the second message on the right is that ROI is not enough. ROI can be useful, but it does not explain when value appears. It does not show how long the investment remains exposed, and it may ignore operational capacity and risk reduction. So if you need to take a decision, a strong decision, you need to combine several perspectives. They need to include payback, they need to include time to value, operational value, which is realizable, expected loss reduction, and even unit economics on the cloud. And the third message is about repeatability. These calculations, the value is not about mathematics sophistication. The value is consistency. They make your assumptions as architect visible. They allow stakeholders to challenge the inputs. And they also create a common decision language across architecture, across business, across risk managers and finance boards, so that we could talk all the same language. But the key here is that the model or the formulas, they should remain simple enough to be explained, but also need to be rigorous enough to defend this architecture. And the fourth message is about the role of the architect, because the architect with this become more strategically relevant when they connect technical choices to business outcomes. That means connecting architecture to cost, to the cash flow, to operational capacity, to resilience, to risk exposure. So this doesn't mean that the architects need to become accountants at this point. It means that the architects understand the financial consequences of design decision. So the goal is not to replace finance in the customer. The goal is to improve the quality of the conversation with finance and to explain why the investment matters. So to help executives compare alternatives on a defensible basis. And that is the final message of this session. Architecture does not create credibility through diagrams alone. It creates credibility when technical decisions can be translated into transparent business choices. So this is my message today so far. So thank you very much for your attention today. And this is now the point in which, if you want, we can take questions.
And we are just a bit over time. So the neat part about this is we have an entire chat area where Fernando is a part of our membership. I'm going to make a couple of announcements, and then we'll have to close out the broadcast for today. But Fernando, I wanted to just say a couple things. First is thank you for this presentation. It was, I was actually on with a group of solution architects in Asia today at a life insurance company, working out value management techniques. And I'm going to send them this webinar right after this, working out how do they look at their roadmap? How do they work with their business stakeholders to understand what to invest in, what not, where should they spend their time? So, right, because there are more projects and programs than there are architects. How to talk to their CFO, COO, etc. I might challenge you on that. You have to be a chief architect, because these 11 people are not. They actually have a chief architect, but they are actually just practicing solution architects in a growing business who don't actually have a means for expressing what to do when and how to prioritize what over what. So I thought that was I think what you did here has a lot more applicability than even just the topmost executives. In fact, we in core, which I know you're going to be teaching in Spain coming up in the September, correct?
Yes, hopefully. Sure.
So, and we get to teach a few of these kind of basic valuation methods in just that class alone. And we're gonna, let's see, I just wanted to make a couple more announcements while we do that. So thank you very much for your talk today. What do you think the big pushback you get from architects in trying to do this is? That was the one question I wanted to ask you.
Yes, I think that it's something that we could work jointly, because I realized that just placing the whole toolkit together is not something that you can do from starting every customer, and you have to propose, like I said, separated formulas to manage the architectural decisions that you take from the design, but also translating them into financial. So indeed, we could start working one by one, but at the end, with different considerations and maybe different factors, the idea, like I said, is to create a whole landscape of financial toolkit to support all the financial teams. Yeah, that's the idea. I think I would work.
So just for those of you who are curious, in the Bitterbox, these techniques are beginning to be, and not perfectly documented yet, I'm hoping Fernando will be submitting some of his techniques to these, are beginning to be documented in our benefits realization, value methods, risk methods, and even to an extent value stream kinds of areas, as well as a focus on investment planning and prioritization. So for any architects that are working on that problem, this is what the Bitterbox has on it. Of course, we're hoping to add every practitioner's learning to this for exactly, I love the way you said that, by the way, Fernando, because it's the way I've expressed it to large teams, is if everybody in the practice is excellent at the techniques in the value model, then you end up with a rich tapestry of measurements and discussions and trade-off analysis that don't make you an accountant, but they might make you essential to the financial planning process, which makes you essential to almost every process in an organization. So
sure.
It's an amazing set of skills to learn.
Sure.
I want to call everybody's attention to the upcoming presentations. We'll be doing this every second or twice a month, the second and the last Wednesday of the month. So at the end of this month, on July 29th, we have Peter Bunk, who is another chief architect. He's going to be talking about architectural analysis using SARM, which is a takeoff on the ATAM methodology, but with some additional trade-off analysis methods that are really super powerful in large solutions. And Peter will be doing that at the same time as we did this time. Hopefully we'll have that initial live stream glitch worked out. I really appreciate your patience on that one, Fernando, and for any of the attendees. And this video will be recorded and live here under the Learn video section. This was last month's call with Bryce Ominsky, and you'll see a few others that we that in that section. This will be live here in the next half an hour or so for Explorer members. So thank you so much for today, Fernando.
Thank you. Thanks to you.
All right. So I'm going to end the broadcast.